Hi, everybody. Michelle Cordero with ASIS Massage Education coming to you with another great guest today. Today, we're going to feature Dr. Joe Muscolino, who is very well known in our massage community for helping to make sense of the muscles with all of his information on kinesiology. Our school recently just started having access to his newer curriculum website that he's going to be talking about and featuring today with us with so many components and resources on it. We are so excited to be able to access this for our students. So I wanted to have him come on and tell us a little bit more about what is involved in the what's available to us and what we can learn from it, because there's just so much information. I get a little lost in it. So let's bring Dr. Joe in and say hi. Hello, Dr. Joe Muscolino.
Hi there, Michelle. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for being so patient and kind through all this process with it. So it's going to be worth it in the end because we're very excited about having you on. So I've been a fan my entire career, and your work has definitely helped make a lot of sense of kinesiology for me and many people. I know when I say your name, there people get very like fanatic and say, "Oh, Dr. Joe, Dr. Joe." And I had the pleasure of meeting you first time last year at the ABMP School Summit very briefly, and we talked a little bit this year. And I was very blown away by how down to earth and just a regular guy that you are, just wanting to share your love of muscle. So thanks
Sure.
for coming on. So would you mind telling us a little bit about like how you got into the field and how you went from, because I know you're a chiropractor by trade, but most of us know you as the muscle guy. So can you give us a little bit of your story to
Not
tell us
because
how
of
you
my
got to
physique,
this?
but because of my knowledge base.
Yeah.
Sure. So yes, when I was younger, I had role models. I had three uncles that were slash are chiropractors, and my father was an engineer. And frankly, to be honest about it, I always wanted to be an engineer until I got into advanced algebra and trig and did
Oh,
not like it anymore. I loved
no.
math up until that point. Then I said, well, if I don't like math, I can't be an engineer. So by default, the only other role model I had was chiropractic. So I
Mhm.
decided to become a chiropractor. When I did, though, because of the influence my father has had on me as an engineer, we look at force production. And when you look at and if I say musculoskeletal system, I'm ignoring fascia. So myofascial-skeletal system, then I'm
Mhm.
ignoring the nervous system control. So neuromyofascial-skeletal system, but musculoskeletal is quicker to say. So we all
Right.
understand I'm thinking about fascia and nervous system. And what I understand about the musculoskeletal system very internally, viscerally, is that it is about force production. Muscles create forces. These forces are pulling forces that move bones, body parts,
Mhm.
joints, etc. And therefore, if I'm going to look at the somatic body, the musculoskeletal body,
Mhm.
chiropractors generally are a bit fixated on the bones and the joints, but really what moves the bones at the joints, the primary mover would be muscular force. We
Mhm.
can talk about fascia can contract and have passive tensions, even if it's not contracting, and gravity and wind and waves and people wrestling with us. But the primary mover force is musculature. So if there's a joint that's not moving well, could it be fascial adhesions locking up the joint? Absolutely. But very likely it's tight musculature. And then, of course, musculature that's weak can't stabilize the joint, so it's unhealthy. So, anyway, my point would be the engineering background brought me around to seeing that in my belief system, that musculature or myofascial tissue is primary. It is what is of most importance for musculoskeletal conditions of all sorts. So I
Mhm.
describe myself as a very soft tissue oriented chiropractic physician.
Right. Do you find that that's a little unique in the field? I hear of stories. Not every. Most of the chiropractors I've met are very understanding and very on board with working with us as massage therapists and understanding that we have this connection. But you still hear of people sometimes saying like you can't do anything without the bones first, and get very bone centric, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you find that your approach is the norm, or is still some challenges with that in the
Well,
field?
this could get like almost like a chiropractic political conversation. But in the world of chiropractic, there's straights and mixers. Straights just want to adjust and adjust only, and that's it. That's all you need to do. You adjust the joint, you release the innate, and the birds sing, and the flowers come to bloom, and everything is wonderful.
Yeah.
Mixers mix in other techniques. I am a very, very big mixer. This is if I count clinic time in school, this is my 40th year treating patients. And I do standardly 1 hour visits. And that 1 hour is because most of the time I'm massaging. I do also a lot of stretching. I also can do electric muscle stim. I don't, ultrasound, things like that. And I can do grade 4 slow oscillation, joint mobilization, manipulation, or I can do fast thrust grade 5, which is what people think of as a chiropractor adjustment. So I am very much a mixer, very unusual in that regard. And I simply, instead of, let's take a good-hearted, altruistic chiropractic physician who says, I can take care of the joints, the internal intrinsic fascial tissue, because really what an adjustment is a stretch to the intrinsic fascial tissue, the joint capsule and the intrinsic ligaments. And if it were spine, there's some intrinsic musculature too. That's really what manipulation is. And then massage therapists take care of the extrinsic, periarticular, outside the joint, soft tissue. So the altruistic chiropractic physician might say, well, I do the intrinsic. Let me hire the massage therapist or refer to for the extrinsic. I simply choose to do both together because I enjoy doing the two together. Then I'm in complete control of when I'm doing which modality technique to mix them together the most appropriately.
Yeah, that's definitely very unique in the field that you don't hear that very often. And most of the time people, and like we said, we could go down a whole rabbit hole about talking about chiropractic, but a lot of people associate with coming in, getting a quick adjustment, and you're out in and out 10, 15 minutes. And and anywhere in between. So very interesting approach. Your patients must love you for sure. Do you get to practice very much? I would imagine you're busy with travel for teaching and writing and all that kind of stuff, but how much do you practice?
I'm very part-time, and I have been for many years. For a good 10 plus years, I've been traveling, 10 to 15 years, I've been traveling internationally a lot. And it's one thing to travel to Kentucky or Iowa or Utah on a Friday and come back on a Monday back to Connecticut where I live. That doesn't interfere with my practice because I'll usually see patients Tuesdays, Thursdays. But when I'm traveling to Australia or Korea or France or Italy or Brazil or something, then that's longer trips. So I have an associate I refer patients to when I'm not around. And when I'm in town, I have patients. I see maybe 5 to 10 hours of patients a week.
Yeah. Okay. Well, those very lucky 5 to 10 people. So, just a little quick shout out for someone who's a big fan, saying great books and program from you. So thanks so much for producing that. So, on that note, how did you go from treating people to saying maybe there's might be a need for me to share my wisdom with other people? And so how did that come about? And then how did you get to what was your first kind of step in that arena?
Okay, so this could be a very long story, so I'm going to try and edit this down. I started teaching at a massage school. I taught at the Connecticut Center for Massage Therapy, one of the founding schools. It was founded in 1980 by Steve Kitts, the same basic year time frame that Bob King opened up in Chicago and Margaret Avery Moon opened up in Tucson, etc. So when I was there, the course manuals for the science classes were not very well organized. And so I rewrote them all. And I've always been fairly organized and I've always liked writing. So I started writing in a sense that way by writing the manuals. And I wrote a great number of manuals in our different programs. One of our programs was 1,150 hours because we satisfied New York State and we had like 300 hours of kinesiology. So then I remember when I wrote my first article for the AMTA journal on the shoulder complex, and And then I wrote another, and then I got a regular column with them, and I wrote for 10 years every issue. And then I started writing textbooks. Well, I'm not actually. I started the textbooks before the articles. I started the textbooks around 2000. I started teaching in '86. So the textbooks were not hard for me to write because I'd been saying this content term after term after term.
Right.
CCMT, the school, had 3 terms a year, and I taught every one of the terms. I usually taught 2 or 3 classes per term. And if you say something and you get 5 questions, you realize you were not very clear. So you think about it and you reflect and you say, let me try to say it more clearly. You say it the next term and you get 3 questions. Well, it's still not clear enough. Then you get 1 question. Then you get 1 question again. Then you get no questions and you think you've got it. And then 6 terms later, you say the same thing and someone raises their hand and says, but does that mean? And you realize that you were not fully clear and you need to amend even more. By the time I started writing, I've been teaching there 15 years, and it was not hard to write my first book, which was like 600 pages, because it is what I'd been saying in class all the time. So it's just a matter of typing it. I finally good at typing. That was the hard part.
Yeah.
So I went from the books to the articles, and I started teaching continuing ed beyond core curriculum, and then I started going nationally and then internationally.
Wow, that's so awesome. So from your perspective, because you're teaching entry-level students from the beginning, what did you find? One, I guess, what was the most challenging part that students would often describe, or what were you seeing them struggle with? And did you figure out a way that would help them through that? Most like one size fits all, I know it's not exactly going to happen, but what are some of those tips? And I know some of our students watching are going to say, I just can't remember this. How am I supposed? Is it just memorization? How am I supposed to put things together? And I know, a little spoiler alert, your website's going to help a lot. But prior to the website, I guess, what are some general ideas there?
Well, I'll go with, that's a great question. And that to me goes to the core of my teaching philosophy, or my philosophy about life. And that is that you try not to memorize. It's very challenging to memorize 200 plus muscles, their attachments, their actions, their, whatever else, their nerve supply, or whatever else you need to know, or all the bones and all the landmarks and all the visceral. I try to memorize as little as I have to. And at the age of 64, I cannot memorize things the way I could before the age of 40 or 50 or something. So to me, it's all about thinking, critical thinking. It's about reasoning power. And that is something I give another shout out to my father. My father was incredible with reasoning power. He worked in aerospace. He worked in the moon landing project. Really smart guy, very humble guy. And when my mom was going back to school and she was doing chemistry and biology and he was math and physics, if she didn't understand something, he would borrow her textbook. He would go sit down in another room for 20 minutes, read it, and come back and teach it to her. And I saw that when I was 9, 10, 11 years old. And I realized that it wasn't about knowing, it wasn't about memorizing, it was about the ability to think clearly, to think critically. So my entire teaching philosophy, I've kind of come to this little mantra statement, is critically think so that you can creatively employ your skill sets. Now, if we say that my primary focus of teaching is anatomy and phys, anatomy is structure, physiology is function, anatomy is what it is, physiology is what it does. And that's not really totally fair, because I've been treating clients for 40 years, and I certainly teach skill sets, hands-on skill sets, assessment and treatment. But if we start with the anatomy and phys, then granted, anatomy is a memorization naming game. You need to memorize the names of the structures. Having said that, though, you take a step back, and if someone names a structure, like if you name a muscle of the body, some muscle.
Serratus anterior.
Serratus. Well, a serrated knife has jagged edges, notched edges. Serrated means that kind of orientation. So the serratus anterior must have that kind of appearance. Well, it has that kind of appearance because it goes on one rib, the next rib, the next rib, etc. Then the fact that we say, so we basically could figure out, intuit, that it's a muscle of the rib cage. Then the fact that it's serratus anterior means that it must be more anterior than another muscle named serratus posterior. And in fact, there are two serratus posteriors, serratus posterior superior and serratus posterior inferior. So if I've never ever learned anything about serratus anterior and someone gives me a multiple choice, 4-choice multiple test, and they say the serratus anterior has which of the following attachments? One, distal tibia to the dorsal surface of the second metatarsal. No. There's no reason that would be a serrated shape. So normally you're going to have 4 choices, and one is going to be ridiculous, one is going to be semi-ridiculous, then there'll be one that's close, then there'll be the right answer. There'll probably be 2 that say something about rib cage. That would be the 2 I'd have to go to, just because I know it's notched, and ribs would give you notched. And then if one is more anterior than the other one, I'd probably go with that one. And I might never have learned the muscle, but I could figure it out from its name. And if someone says, what are the joint actions? I'm going to look for something that talks about moving the rib cage, or therefore breathing. So I guess what I'm saying is there's a tremendous amount that you can intuit from the name that is given. So looking at Latin roots. So if someone speaks Italian, Spanish, French, Portuguese, they have a tremendous advantage right off the bat, because Latin is the basis for anatomy, phys, medicalese. And Italian is the closest to Latin, so it's the best, and Spanish is next, etc. But even if you don't, 75% of English vocabulary comes from Latin, which is, even though we are technically a Germanic language in grammar structure, vocabulary-wise, we are a Latin language. So you just look for serrated knife, anterior, ante up before the hand starts in poker. Antebellum South, before the war in the South. Ante means in front of, before, anterior, the front of the body. So I will always tell students, stop, listen to the name. Is there anything in English you can go to? Once you have the names of the structures, then the physiology, the functioning should make sense. Serratus anterior, it goes from the scapula and it goes onto the rib cage. The scapula is in back, the rib cage is in front. Assuming the rib cage is fixed, the scapula will get pulled anteriorly toward the rib cage attachment. That's protraction of the scapula. Some upper fibers that are like this and some lower fibers like that. The upper fibers will protract and elevate, and the lower fibers will protract and depress. All of this is figure-outable. It is does not need to be memorized. So inherent in your second aspect of your question, it's so hard to memorize it. It's wrong to even try to memorize. And I taught for a lot of years, and if you teach and you say to them, okay, we're going to cover brachialis muscle, and you give them the different information, they remember, oh, the muscle that began with B did this. They get brachialis and brachioradialis, and it just doesn't, buccinator, it just doesn't work anymore. Names. It's more work in the beginning to figure out how a muscle functions and how you can look at a name. But once you get the hang of that, it's streaming, easy streaming all the way down. And so, I mean, that's there. I could go on and on and on. I'll also, I stopped teaching muscles one at a time many years ago, and now I teach functional groups. And so when one first looks, I say, every muscle that crosses the elbow joint anteriorly will flex the elbow joint. Every muscle in back will extend it. Every muscle that crosses the shoulder joint anteriorly with a vertical component to its direction of fibers will flex. Everyone in back will extend. Everyone on the outside will abduct. Everyone on the inside will adduct. Everyone that wraps this way will medially rotate. Everyone that wraps the other way will laterally rotate. And then look at pictures. Just keep looking at pictures. And when you can picture the muscle and you can see its line of pull, that will give you the joint action, or the joint actions, or the oblique plane motion pattern.
Yeah, I love that. And I love when I went to school, I 20 plus years in the field now, we didn't really have a ton of you know, resources that had it, but it was like this is the muscle, this is the next muscle. And to see it now as a group makes it does make so much more sense because I know of therapists and even myself, like before thinking, okay, what muscle does flexion? And you have to there's many that could be. And it as a functional group, I think that's an important way to look at it. And I love your explanation of being critical thinkers. We try to instill that in our students as well, because sometimes people throw you for a loop with something. You memorized it one way, and then now you got to throw out everything out the window if it doesn't fit in this little package anymore. So you got to
Yeah,
think.
when people memorize, they go into rigid thinking. I mean, they go into rigid
Mm,
thinking. They're no longer flexible with application. And then they
right.
start going into cookbook routines. And cookbook
Hmm.
routines for treatment are mediocrely good across the board. 10 people come in with a problem, you'll probably help five or six of them, seven of them. But then the ones that are a little more challenging to help, you're stuck because
Yeah.
you don't really truly, like, this is something I can be a little bit of a hard ass about this, is that when I teach a workshop in person with people, I will very often say, as we're going through routines, I'll say, I should be able to stop you at any point in your session with someone and ask you, why are you doing what you're doing right now? And if
Hmm.
you cannot give me a reason, then I know you're not at least thinking through the session. Now, there are times where my hands kind of take the leads, and I
Hmm.
might not be thinking at that exact moment because I'm feeling with my hands. But if someone stops me, I could go back, go from right brain to left brain, and say, aha, the reason why I'm doing this is this. But it should have
Hmm.
certainly been there from the treatment strategy, from the initial exam or the gathering of findings at the beginning of that session or whatever
Yeah.
the case would be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really beautifully put. I can't even increase anything on that one. Um, so going into more of your books and approach, I did always wonder a question because I believe is it in your materials that for your actions you do like flexion of the leg, for example, at the hip joint, right? Is that the way that you approach yours?
Oh yeah.
And so, can you explain a little? So, as opposed to flexion of the hip, you say flexion of the leg at the hip joint, something along
Well,
those
I
lines,
wouldn't say
or
flexion of the
similar,
leg at hip joint because the leg doesn't go to the hip
or
joint.
the thigh
And the
at the
knee, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Let me see if I can do this. If I let's see if I can do it and stay in the camera. I have to
Uh-huh.
go this way. Everything's like reverse.
Yeah.
So I am going to show. Let me see. Start here. I'm going to show flexion of my arm. You
Okay.
ready?
Yes.
I
Uh
just flex my arm at my elbow joint.
huh.
My arm can move at my elbow joint just like my forearm can move at my elbow joint. Flexion of the forearm at the elbow joint, flexion of the arm at the elbow joint, like doing a
Mhm.
chin up. Okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
I can also flex my arm at my shoulder joint. When you have a joint, there's bone A and bone B.
Mhm.
Either bone can move. Therefore, and if you just say flexion of the elbow joint, you haven't specified which body part moved. I don't know if it's the standard insertion moving toward origin, distal attachment moving toward proximal attachment, or if it's the reverse action, closed chain action of origin
Mhm.
toward insertion, proximal toward distal. And even though we might say, oh, that's so unusual, no, it's not. In the
Mhm.
lower extremity, reverse closed chain actions occur more often than standard open chain. Plus, what's the whole point of origin and insertion? I
Mhm.
find origin and insertion terminology to be incredibly silly,
Mhm.
gosh,
Yeah.
silly, wasteful, and promoting of rigid thinking. If someone says the quads, what do the quads do? They extend the knee joint. Everyone, if I'm gonna, I taught at a conference where 160 people there. I said,
Mhm.
everybody show me extension at the knee joint, and everybody extended their leg at the knee joint. Who
Mhm.
does extension at the knee joint? The quads. If the
Mhm.
quads were one muscle, they would be by far the largest muscle in the human body. Are
Mhm.
they big to extend the leg at the knee joint? No, they're not. They're big to extend the thigh at the knee joint. So when you're seated, you get up. You straighten out your knee joint by moving your thigh towards your leg. That's their major function. So
Uh-huh.
just to get away from origin insertion and just say, we have a proximal attachment, we have a distal attachment, we have a superior attachment, an inferior, a medial one, a lateral one.
Mm-hmm.
When a muscle contracts, assuming it is able to move a body part, concentric contraction, it's going to move either bone A to bone B, or bone B to bone A, or both. If it's an eccentric, one of the bones moves away. If it's isometric, they stay the same length, they don't move. So I guess my point is that if you want to fully describe a joint action, you need to state the body part that is moving, and you need to state the joint where the movement occurs.
Yeah. I love that. And I love your bringing up origin and insertion. And I've been talking to students about this because I know a lot more resources are showing proximal attachment versus distal attachment as opposed to origin insertion. But still some are saying the origin is the more of the proximal attachment, that kind of still using kind of interchangeable.
Then why bother saying origin? Why not
Yeah.
just say it's the proximal? Because the implication is that the origin stays fixed.
Right.
And the insertion moves. That's the implication.
Right.
And in fact, if I were to even go, so I just wrote an article for ABMP of what's wrong with origin insertion terminology, and I go through many examples. And one example is a massage therapist. If someone comes in and they have a hyperlordotic lumbar spine, why do they have that? Most likely because they have an excessively anteriorly tilted pelvis. Why do they have that? Probably because their hip flexors are tighter at baseline tone than their hip extensors. So what you have to say is, well, if their hip flexors are tight, they're not standing with their thigh flexed in the air and their foot up in the air. They're standing with their pelvis anteriorly tilted toward the anterior thighs, which then requires the lumbar spine to increase its lumbar lordotic curve of extension to compensate and bring their body weight back. So that means I have to understand the pelvic movements of hip joint, which means I have to understand closed chain joint actions, which means we shouldn't even call them hip flexors. We should call them hip anterior tilters, pelvic posterior tilters, etc. So there's all these ways that are insidious that when someone embraces origin insertion terminology, I think that they learn to think rigidly, and they have a harder time being more flexible with understanding how often closed chain occurs and stabilization is needed. So I could go on with this show, so I'll stop.
Yeah, no, I love you bringing that up, and something I'm really trying to instill in our students to think, again, going back to that critical thinking and being open to not just memorization on a page, because it doesn't make sense.
I'll finish with this. A muscle is a pulling machine, period. Do not make it any more complicated than that. When a muscle contracts, it creates a pulling force toward its center. It might not have enough strength to move one of the bones or the other bone or both bones toward the center, because the resistance force, which could be anything from the weight of a body part with gravity to you wrestling with someone else or whatever it would be, but assuming its force of contraction is greater than resistance, then one bone will move toward the other, A to B, B to A, or A and B to each other. And it could be either one. And if it's less than the resistance force, it's going to lengthen out and you'll get eccentric away from the center. And if it stays the same force as the resistance, you get isometric. But a muscle is a pulling machine creating a pulling force. It has no intention on which attachment is going to move. It doesn't want its distal attachment to move. It doesn't intend it. It is just a pulling machine. It's the nervous system that co-orders everything.
Yes. Oh, love that.
Okay.
So if somebody wants to learn more about this, they have your wonderful resource that you have been, how long have you been working on this part of your website, this curriculum?
Well, the actual program for schools that you just subscribed to, for example, I think it went live about 1.5 years ago, something along that line, maybe 2 years ago, but it's this year, 2023, I've decided to greatly expand it based on requests. It began as muscle anatomy masterclass. Then during COVID, I added bones and joints and kinesiology. So then I added visceral, then I added pathology, then I added orthopedic assessment testing and some hands-on. So now I'm adding a full curriculum. So it would be the resources appropriate needed for a school of up to at least 1,000-hour program to be able to support what they're teaching. But
Yeah.
the main focus, the main focus that is my forte would be the anatomy, the kinesiology, musculoskeletal anatomy, and phys. But we'll have everything else too.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to take us through a little exploration of your work there? I'll let you get your screen set up there, and then I'll put it into the feed.
So I think first I have to, 1 second here.
And I'm going to, for those watching who might want to find out more, I'm just going to put your website name, web address on the screen here. They can find out more at LearnMuscles.com.
Okay. I'm going to click the present button, then we'll move over to the other screen so it doesn't have that. So, stop screen. Hold on. I'm getting something different than we got before. Present. Share screen. There we go. Entire screen here, there. And you tell me when you see my screen, if you do.
Yeah, I see it coming here.
Okay.
So.
And now do you see these files?
Yes.
Okay,
got
it.
Woohoo.
Okay, perfect. So it was rebranded recently as Massage Therapy Master Online Curriculum, MOC. And are you ready? Shall I start to go through?
Yes, yeah, I'm really excited.
Okay, approximately how long do you want me to spend doing this? Because I could try and,
maybe like 10, 15, not more than that, yeah.
Sure. Okay, so there are a number of folders here. These are the folders that we have. And the first 3 folders in red are muscle, anatomy, physiology, structure, function, etc. The next 3 are bones and joints. Then there's a visceral anatomy. Then there's kinesiology lectures. So this is all effectively anatomy and phys of one sort or another. The muscles are broken into 3 areas of the body: upper extremity, lower extremity, axial body. So if I just pick upper extremity as my example, then each area is broken into 4 modules. So there are 4 modules in the upper extremity: shoulder girdle, arm, forearm, hand. And if you look at the number here, that will be the number of subfolders in there. So the shoulder girdle is a relatively small one, 8 subfolders. That means there are going to be 6 muscles in there and 2 extra folders down here. So would you like to pick any one of these?
Sure, let's do the rhomboids.
Okay, rhomboids. So typically each muscle is handled in 10 video and or still frame lessons. So the first one is always a really nice and easy entry. It's an animated illustration, meaning it's an illustration that is then animated. I'll jump somewhere in the middle where you will have arrows. There, arrows that will move around, etc. So I'm also going to show that you can watch it and watch it at a slower speed. So if you needed a little more time to process what you're doing, the intake of information, you can slow it down. You can watch it faster also. You can go here and there'll be subtitles. You can go to English subtitles. And every word here has been checked and double checked by me. This is not an algorithm. You can have the translations for Italian, for Arabic, for Korean, for Japanese, for simple Chinese, for French, Spanish, Portuguese, Slovenian, and Polish. So all of these were done by someone who does know the content and knows the language. So there's Italian translations.
Nice. That's awesome. Maybe we can also practice our foreign language skills by doing that.
I think there's certainly that possibility. So it's this nice simple one there, and that's how it begins. Let me just go off here so we don't have them coming up in the next videos. Then there's a cadaver video for the rhomboids. That one's about 4 minutes. Then we show the muscle actions. I'm going to make a point here too. A muscle action is a cardinal plane joint action, or is a cardinal plane motion. When a muscle crosses more than one cardinal plane. So the cardinal planes are sagittal, frontal, and transverse.
Mhm.
When you have a line of pull that's across 2 or 3 cardinal planes, you really have an oblique plane motion. We break it into components. It's like if someone's walking northwest,
Mhm.
we in English can say they're walking northwest. In kinesiology, you have to say they're walking north and they're walking west, which could
Mm.
make you think that they could walk purely north and purely west when they can't. They have to walk the diagonal oblique northwest. Anyway,
Mhm.
my point is I go through open chain, cardinal plane component joint actions, then the oblique plane motion pattern, then closed chain. But anyway, here is with a live model. We have a 4-minute video on what, let's just see here. So it's with a live model. Then we have the name origin. This is just cute. What does rhomboid minor mean? Rhombus means a four-sided object, and the angles don't have to be 90 degrees, so it's not a square or a rectangle. Minor means smaller than, major means bigger than. And I very often put other illustrated muscles in, but I make them less in density, so you
Mhm.
have them for some context, but they don't kind of confuse the view. So that's a cute little one. Then the written information is going to be here, attachments, actions, and some notes that are interesting to manual therapists. Then there's a palpation. This is a very thorough 7-minute palpation, not for the rhomboids, but not everyone has that kind of stick-to-itiveness for a longer video. So then we have a 1-minute palpation, which it's loosely 1 minute. This is a minute 34. Then we have a stretch for the muscle,
I
and
love that.
self-care stretch, and then we have, when they're known, the trigger points and referral zones. And I'm going to be adding one more component. That's going to be a 1-minute stretch, a faster, quicker stretch. But right now there's about there's about 10 videos per muscle. So that is how each individual muscle is handled. There's some bonus stuff, and then there's a test prep folder where you have the muscle and a lead line, but you don't know the answer. The answer key is below. There it is there. Upper, middle, lower trap, upper, middle, lower trap, subclavius, deep to pec major, etc. At the bottom of it would be group illustrations. So that is how the muscles are arranged. Bones and joints are similarly divided into upper extremity, lower extremity, axial body. I'm in upper extremity again. There's 3 types: animated illustrations, skeletal bones, and bone palpation. The animated illustrations are once again, I'll pick humorous, are once again illustrations, but they're animated. I'm speaking over it. So there's
Mhm.
an anterior view for the humerus, and it's a regular length. This one's long, 650. And then there's a short one, a quick review, 2 minutes and 2 seconds. And the animated ones here, the longer one, have muscles that attach to the landmarks, whereas the short one doesn't have the muscles. Then a posterior view, regular and quick review, medial, regular, quick, lateral, regular, quick, proximal, regular, quick, distal, regular, quick. And I didn't make a point. Then there's a quiz at the end of each one for test prep. So those are on the, and there's the joints are down below, bones, joints. And I'm not giving you much chance. Do you want to throw anything in here as we're going?
No, I'm just in awe. I was like loving all that.
I did a lot of filming over COVID. COVID was like this
Mhm.
opportunity. The world stopped, and I was able to go film.
Yeah.
I filmed more than 200 hours of content. So
Wow.
if I were to go to the skeletal bones ones, it's the way I used to teach at CCMT in front of a class. So I sat there with a skeleton, and people sat all around in front. And there's one on the skeleton, articulated with the skeleton, and one disarticulated, and then a disarticulated quick review. So that's how it's there. It's like me actually teaching it. And then, and then there's the bone palpation. And the bone palpation is bone palpation for the upper extremity. And this is a 4.5-hour palpation for the landmarks. And you can quickly navigate to where you want to go. Hand, arm,
Nice.
shoulder. So those are all the bone and bony bones and joints. And then you have visceral, which I really quite like because it was always challenging to teach in a massage school because there was always way too many details when you
Mm-hmm.
got into visceral, because the books were written for nurses and other people. So if I pick cardiovascular, for example, it's a 1 hour, it's this essential visceral anatomy, about an hour. And again, you can go to the heart, you can go to systemic circulation, capillary exchange, you can go to cardiac conduction, heart sounds, blood pressure, and literally it's me teaching on a 65-inch screen. And you can click here for all the PDF slides, and you can even download them, and you can even print them. So you're getting an hour free lecture book as well. And it's me teaching. So if I could jump.
Nice.
Like, and so there's a 1 hour for each of the major systems of the body, which I really enjoyed this because it was getting that material down to what was truly important for a
Mm-hmm.
manual therapist. There's a great saying I love lately: if you're looking for a needle in the haystack, it doesn't help to add more hay. So trying to hit the nail on the head. Now,
Right.
the kinesiology lectures, this is a very thorough, thick area. There are 24 lectures that comprise my entire 600-ish page kinesiology book. And these are all the topics. And, whenever I say pick a chapter, almost everybody picks fascia. So I'm just going to pick that. It's a 4 hour and 45-minute lecture. And again, it's me standing in front of the class teaching.
Wow.
And you can open up PDFs, you can print them, you can download.
Amazing.
So there's 24 lectures here that are extremely thorough, even going down to neuromuscular system, posture and gait, common postural distortion, stretching, types of muscle contractions, tons more on muscle function over here. So that is really the anatomy phys portion. Then there's a pathology section. And the pathology already has 31 videos here and 15 e-booklets. But I'm very happy to announce that literally last week, Ruth Warner and I came to an agreement. And starting at the latest, January 1st of 2024, I'm going to have another folder of 60 hours of Ruth Warner's pathology.
Wow.
Licensing her content. That is the only place you will need to have a book, because it requires you to have Ruth Warner's textbook. But that is just a real, I'm so proud and so happy and honored that
That's
Ruth.
awesome. Yeah, we have it for our curriculum, so all the students have a copy. So
Yeah. So that's going to be in here as well, in addition to everything I have. Everything I have is musculoskeletal pathology. So Ruth has musculoskeletal as well as visceral. And I really needed the visceral, but I'll just get all of it. So we'll be extra redundant on the musculoskeletal. Assessment is going to have postural assessment with 18 videos, orthopedic assessment with 34 videos. And I'm just going through more quickly now because I spent a lot of time there. I'm licensing a business course and an ethics course because that's not an area of expertise. I already have the ethics. I'm waiting for the business to come in. Actually, I don't even have to put coming soon. We can remove that. This got loaded in about a week and a half ago. So I'm just going to jump. Okay, massage therapy. Now, you might not need anything like this, but I'm going to be filming massage therapy 1, 2, 3, 4. Intro to massage, advanced techniques with it, orthopedic massage and sports massage. And the person, for example, who I've just filmed here, this person, he taught at CCMT for 30 years. So I'll just jump in the middle somewhere.
this is great. And I can see where you're saying that this could be a whole curriculum for an entry-level school. It's got all the major components.
Exactly. I'm even thinking of getting a meditation course for self-care, although there's other self-care. So yes, this is going to be everything that a school, I could imagine a school needing. The only thing I don't have is any Eastern energy techniques. And I would have to find people with expertise there. Although I do have Thai massage, Cambodian massage, and other things in there. But so this is there, and I have all these with Neil, and we're going to have all the lectures soon. Those are being does it where he describes things. Then there's one in real time.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not narrating through this, not slowing down to talk about things, so you can get a better sense what it would be like. And we filmed it with a 2-camera technique, so we can have the pullback and then we can have the close-ups, as you just saw. So
Right.
this has been a project going on literally last month or so. I'm very, very happy about this. And then we even have 2 of my books in PDF format. Again, you can get for free a low back pelvis book and the neck book that goes into a lot of stretching, joint mobilization, body mechanics, etc. I'm very big with body mechanics.
Yeah.
And about 90 articles that I've written that are all different topics. Kinesiology, neurology, pathology, pelvic tilt and spinal compensation, body mechanics, work harder, not smarter. I mean, work smarter, not harder. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you want to challenge yourself. Okay, and then we even have advanced manual therapies. This is not core curriculum, but there's 10 of my 2-day continuing education workshops, 5 by skill set and 5 by region of the body. And then we have also, when I travel internationally, I very often get to film. So I filmed Thai massage. I filmed when I was in Hawaii. I filmed 2 different Lomi Lomis. When I was in Cambodia, I filmed Cambodian massage. When I was in Bali, I never went to the beach. I filmed Balinese massage. So these are all different types of massage that maybe a student wants to look at and say, what are the things that are out there? What makes Balinese traditional Balinese massage? So this was filmed in Bali. I finally found a spa that would let me.
That's awesome. That is so cool. Yeah.
It just shows. So that's all extra stuff. And then self-care and exercise. There's a tremendous amount. There's 78 videos here on self-care. There's strength training to be stronger, or you could give that advice to clients if you're legally allowed. There's a whole video on yoga. There's like 3 videos on Pilates mat, a whole lot on body mechanics, whole 3 different video DVDs on stretching. Each one's like an hour to 2 hours. So there's a tremendous amount of content. I have no idea if I stayed within the.
Oh yeah, you're doing great. Yeah. Absolutely. I've been on the site quite a few times already, and I find I have to put a timer on how long I can stay on while I need to get other work done. And 20 plus year therapist, it makes me so excited to keep learning myself. And I'm just thrilled that our students are getting this at the start of their program. And so we're doing the best we can to incorporate it as much as we can too. So I know we're slowly replacing a lot of our kinesiology content to include it and such too. So I know we use our learning management system. I already got the green light to include the links.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
The spot.
And so, yeah, but as we're developing that part, students do have their own, the login to go in and just explore. And the instructors have been given that too, to start incorporating it into the classroom. A lot of our all the in-person classes are big hands-on content, and we have the lectures. We're a hybrid program, so we have our lectures on the learning management system. So this is just going to make it more robust and more reachable, I think, for our students too, and not dry. So sometimes you're reading the stuff and trying to focus, and it makes it challenging. So this is really going to help them make those connections and process that information. So thank you so much for that. For us.
I will just add this one plug, and that is that if you would have asked me 10 years ago how I felt about online learning, I would have been fairly negative. I would have said, Well, it's a kinesthetic
Hmm.
profession. It's something you need to do in person. But even before COVID, I was teaching in two different places. Singapore was one, and Iowa was the other, where they said, "When are you coming back?" And I said, "Next year." And they
Hmm.
said, "We have to wait a year to continue in your program with what you're doing." And I'm like, I can't get everywhere.
Yeah.
And it was in Iowa, when it happened shortly after Singapore, or maybe it was Australia, that I said, "Oh my goodness, well, let me put stuff online. It's the next best thing." And yes, I'll say it's the next best thing. You have to learn hands on, hands on. But I
Hmm.
will say that it is actually an advantage to online asynchronous learning. And that is that maybe in class you were a little tired. You didn't quite absorb what was said. Maybe the teacher wasn't quite as experienced or on that day to explain
Hmm.
well. Maybe the book resource wasn't as well written as whatever it could be. You
Hmm.
can go home, you can go on here. For whatever it's worth, I've been teaching for 37 years. I've taught these subjects many times. I've kind of honed my verbiage.
Hmm.
Hopefully, I speak very clearly. And that the one thing I try to do is be simple and straightforward and clear. Is you can watch it at 2:15 in the afternoon or 2:15 in the morning. You can
Hmm.
watch at slower speed. You can put the subtitles on. You can rewind it, watch again, watch over and over.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it should replace all
Hmm.
learning, but I think as an adjunct to it, it is
Yeah.
an incredible resource.
Yeah, I think it's great. Even English as a second language students, I think, would be very helpful. Sometimes in class, they're like, "What did they say?" They don't want to say it. Can you repeat that? Because I just didn't understand the English part of it.
Yeah.
And to give them that tool to be able to on their spare time to kind of catch up with it or prepare
Yeah.
ahead or
The
whatever they might.
subtitles in English and/or translations definitely
Hmm.
help a lot of people where it's their
Yeah.
second language, or even if it's the first language. I find my wife and I find that when we watch movies, we have the subtitles on
Oh,
more and
me too.
more because what did they just say? Oh,
Yeah.
I missed it.
Yeah.
Oh, look, wow! If I
Yeah.
hadn't heard that, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah, same. I have to always, I started when my son was little and it was like getting noisy and I'm like, I can't go back now. Like, what? I have to have it on.
yeah.
Oh, it's so wonderful. So I'm going to put for those who are not part of our school and are watching this, that they can find out more information about all the whole curriculum. But you have other things too for individual people to
Mm.
be able to get subscriptions and things like that as well.
There are
So
subscription streaming programs, one specifically for graduated therapists. And all of your students can get that 50% off for life because they went to your school and your school subscribed. But for other people out there now, and there's
mhm.
other subsections of streaming programs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I mean, and the value of what you're offering for what we're getting, I almost can't put a price tag on it because it's really so it's bulk shopping at Costco here. Like I'm getting so much for my money. So I really appreciate that. So I hope students to keep taking advantage of it even more than what we can apply in the day-to-day curriculum and take you up on your offer for their lifetime
Yeah. For the
thing as
Learn
well.
Muscles Continuing Education, the LMCE, which is
Okay.
also on my website. Yeah.
Awesome. Beautiful. All right, Dr. Joe. So now we've come to the dreaded time of having to figure out what your superpower is. So we're gonna get to know you a little bit more and get to find out what those answers to those questions are. So first one is, what superpower or talent would you most like to have?
Right. So when you mentioned that to me before we started, that would be a question.
Hmm.
Um, Here, I have two answers. Here's my first answer. I don't want a superpower. I think that the struggle of life is how we learn.
Hmm.
And if I can somehow skip all of that, it's kind of like cheating
Yeah.
this wonderful, but at times painful experience of life. Having said that, I did think as I was going along, as I said before, I'm 64, and I used to be a big tennis player. Now I'm a big pickleball player, pickleball,
Nice.
and I would like to have a superpower where I get no myofascial injuries.
Sign us up for that one and see if you can figure that one out.
That would be mine. No myofascial injuries.
Yes.
I could play 5 hours a day
Yeah.
and never get an inflamed Achilles tendon or a medial elbow tendinopathy or
Yeah.
any of
Yeah.
the other things that I'm slightly battling with at
Yes.
times. Yeah.
But I do wonder though, would that cause us to not slow down? Sometimes we need to slow down, and yeah, but maybe less painfully so.
Pain. Well, okay. So I'm not even saying not the pain. I'm
Right, right,
saying
right.
not the injury, which means I want a superpower for the integrity
Yes,
of my
I got
bone and myofascial tissues
yeah,
so that they stay healthy even
yeah,
if I play 10 hours.
yes.
That's a superpower.
Yeah, that would definitely be that very incredible. If only could market it. So, if you weren't doing what you're doing now in the field, being chiropractor, being our muscle guy extraordinaire, what would you most like to be doing? What other occupation have you played around with thinking about doing?
Well, I think if I weren't this, not that I'd like to be doing it, but I think I'd become an efficiency expert because when I look at doing a task that gets repeated, I
Hmm.
literally say, wow, if I do it this way, I cut out 10 seconds. If I do the task 20 times in a day, I just cut out 200 seconds. That's 3 minutes a day. Three
Yeah,
minutes a day times 365 days a year is 1,000 minutes. See, I still like math. A
yeah,
1,000 minutes, I could have written 3 more articles or something.
yeah, yeah.
So I definitely like to organize and make things efficient.
Hmm.
I don't know that I would enjoy that as a field, though.
Uh-huh.
So I very much enjoy what I'm doing. So I
Yeah,
don't really know that
yeah,
there's something else I'd rather do.
right. That's yeah, great answer for sure. Yeah, and then if money and circumstances weren't issues, where would you most like to live in the world?
I'd still live where I live, which is Stamford, Connecticut. I'm less than
Mhm.
1 hour from Manhattan by an
Right.
express train. I can get over to Europe, relatively easy
Mhm.
that way. I'm not so I mean all those advantages, but if I had more money, then we would. My wife grew up in Italy, and I
Mhm.
can speak Italian fairly well. I'm Italian American, but my family came over a long time ago. My
Yeah.
wife is from Italy; most of her family's there. Have an apartment in Italy, and then have an apartment on the west coast of Mexico. 3
Oh,
months, 3 months, 6 months.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I like that plan. I can get behind that one
you
for
like
sure.
that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is your most treasured possession?
So that one I did remember you telling me would be asked. And I
Mhm.
thought about that for a while. And I'm going to be honest. I
Mhm.
really almost hate to say it, but I'm going to explain why. My most treasured possession is my cell phone.
Uh-huh.
And that is not going to sound politically correct, but here's why. My cell phone allows me to FaceTime with my daughter in Virginia, who just gave birth
I know.
to a new grandchild.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Last week, we just did last night. It allows me to talk with my son down in New York City, where he lives, Simona's family in Italy. It allows me, well, this is computer, but I do Zooms on this with people in India and Singapore. I was just on WhatsApp with people in Singapore an hour ago.
Mhm.
All of my photos, I organized them during COVID. At any point, I can pull up my photos. It has
Mhm.
all of my contacts. This is my connection
Yeah.
with the world, with other people.
Right.
It's my ability to get knowledge. I can look things up. Music. I love the Beatles.
Mhm.
I love Beethoven. It's all right here at a
Yeah.
moment's notice. I put my AirPods in and I can.
Yeah.
So this is probably as a physical object,
Mhm.
the object that connects me with the rest of humanity and the world and knowledge.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Bonus follow-up question. Favorite Beatles song?
Oh my goodness. So I am a massive Beatles fan, and that's a very tough one to
I
do.
know, I can imagine.
But I think about that a lot, believe it
Yeah,
or not.
yeah.
I once tried. I was in New Zealand between teaching gigs, and I tried to write down my favorite 10 Beatles songs. 10, and I couldn't do it, so I went to 20, and I couldn't do that. I went to 30, and I'm not even sure if I was able to do 30. But if I really had to push comes to shove, it
Mhm.
would be Hey Jude. Hey
Mm,
Jude, August 1968,
yeah.
just song of healing and redemption and
Yes.
people coming together, having a sing-along chorus at the end, the
Yes.
inclusion of that,
Yeah.
the interpretation. Paul wrote it to
For
John's son
Julian.
Julian after the divorce. But John thought Paul was talking to John. The line, "You have found her, now go out and get her." John thought that was Paul's permission to go with Yoko. I think you could interpret it so many ways.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful, beautiful. And it was
Yeah.
the first Beatles song released on the Apple label.
Ah, I did not know that. I'm a fan of the Beatles, but probably not even close to where you are. But having experienced Paul McCartney doing it a couple times live, the Hey Jude, amazing to be in the crowd for that. So tears. You get, it's like goosebumps when you feel that.
Can I ask you your favorite Beatles song?
I have kind of a similar thing where I have depends on my mood, but one of my favorites from a long time ago, and it just kind of always gets me in a good mood for weird reasons, is "A Day in the Life." And I don't
Oh,
quite know. Yeah,
goosebumps.
yeah.
A Day in the Life, Rolling Stone magazine called "A Day in the Life" the greatest one Beatles song. It's the last song on Sgt. Pepper's, which came out in June of '67. The beginning section was John. Paul is the one that had the middle section. Paul thought of the crescendo with the orchestra. They hit four of them on three pianos, hit an E chord at the end that holds for 30 plus seconds.
Yeah.
Story of Tara Brown, someone who died, in a car crash, in a way. The dreaminess of it. My feel-good Beatles song is "I Should Have Known Better," which is the second song on Hard Day's Night, which came out in '64.
Yeah.
I should have known better. No matter what mood I'm in, I put that song on,
Yeah.
and I'm in a great mood.
Yeah. So many good pieces. I love it. So, and I'm glad I picked a good one. Hell yay.
Oh, you picked a massively great one.
Yeah. So last but not least, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Patience. Patience.
Yeah.
That things, all good things, and some bad things maybe, but life will unfold at life's pace.
Yeah.
And although I probably wouldn't have the amount of content I have if I hadn't pushed hard, I still believe that it would be just as good to be there with maybe 3/4 of it at a calmer pace. So yeah, patience.
Yeah. Good for everybody.
Let life unfold. Let it be. Let it
be. On
Back-
that note, thank you so much, Dr. Joe. I'm going to put your website back up on the screen for everyone to go check it out. Students are watching this. You have a different website to access the content, and but this is to sign up for their own subscriptions. Check out all the cool things that you have available to us. Thank you for making muscle learning so much easier for all of us and making it make sense. And I really appreciate you taking out this time. Congratulations to your daughter and family for her newborn. Yeah. And any last words for anybody?
No, just all I'll say is, I will say to the students, you cannot know everything right away. You need to be patient with yourself, with your learning. I always say there are 3 stages of learning. The first stage is, huh? The second stage is, oh yeah. The third stage is mastery of it. The first time you see something, if you don't know it all, you're at the huh stage. Then you get to the oh yeah stage. That's good. Take your time, go over it, but be disciplined, be methodical, spend your time. Life comes not just from passion to learn, but the discipline, the setting aside the time, the methodicalness, just of staying with it. That's really what the key is. And that's where patience is. Patience comes from the fact that I don't know it all right away, but I will keep learning each day. And one day I will get there.
Yep.
It was an honor and also a pleasure, Michelle. So all your students are very lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And thanks to your team for creating all this. And we will hopefully see you again in the future.
Yes, I hope so.
Thanks, Dr. Joe. Bye, everybody.